Hey everyone, this is Dr. Syed Haider with MyGoToDoc, and we should be live streaming to Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and probably Rumble as well. This is our weekly live stream Q&A, so we will jump right into it. And if you have any questions during the live stream, just drop them in the chat. So let's see. First question is from Molly Mary Gilmore. What dose of ivermectin is recommended for COVID? My husband got it at work and now I have it. Well, I think the most important thing about taking ivermectin for COVID is to take it right away. So, it's kind of hard to have the same level of efficacy if you start day 3, 4, or 5, which is really when most people start. So it's, I always try to stress this, that day 1 of symptoms is going to be so subtle that most people just miss it. That's day 1, right? It's like the tickle in your throat and you're not sure, am I sick, am I not sick? Not really sure yet. Maybe it's just swallowed something wrong, or, your throat feels like a little bit dry, the way it does before you get a sore throat, something like that, or a little trickle of nasal mucus, or, you feel a little bit stuffier than normal. And that's day 1. That's the day to start treating it if you want to have the most success. And since most people are not willing to go all in at that first sign of illness, it's good to have, plan A and plan B. So plan B, if you're like that, if you don't want to just throw ivermectin every time you have a little bit of a tickle in your throat, you can save ivermectin for plan B. And for plan A, which usually actually works and you don't even have to get to plan B, you take... you have a menu of options. You could take really high dose vitamin C, and I'm talking about like 30, 40 grams of vitamin C, in ascorbic acid form. And the easiest way to do that is with capsules. And then I thought, maybe you could take ascorbic acid, which is pure vitamin C. If you put it into water, it's so incredibly sour and disgusting. You can't stomach more than a few grams in water, even if you sweeten it. So you can take ascorbyl palmitate, which is ascorbic acid joined to palmitic acid. But the issue there is only 40% by weight is going to be ascorbic acid. So instead of taking, 40 grams of ascorbic acid, you'd be taking 100 grams of ascorbyl palmitate. So maybe that's doable, dump it into some juice, and it doesn't have a bad taste. I don't think it has much taste at all. So that's an option. I've never done that. I've just swallowed the pills. Other options include, which I would actually start with these other ones probably nowadays. Ascorbic acid, 40 grams is a bit unnatural seeming to me. Although, maybe, it's interesting. Shabazz Ahmed, my colleague and close friend who does consults for people with all kinds of illnesses, he recently wrote or shared an article with me with some thoughts about nutrition. And one of the things he pointed out was that with the modern use of antibiotics, proliferation of antibiotics, we've probably knocked out a lot of very helpful microbial friends that we used to have. And there used to be a bacteria that was probably more prevalent that made vitamin C in our guts from glucose, I think. So, it'd be great if we could stick that back in there so that, like other animals, we would have a ready access to a source of vitamin C within our own bodies, or at least within the gut, which is really outside the body, but that's another topic. So, if you didn't know it, most animals can make a lot of vitamin C inside their own bodies because they have this enzyme that this bacteria has that turns glucose into vitamin C. And it seems that at some point in evolution we lost it, and perhaps we offloaded that to this bacteria, and then we killed the bacteria and wiped it out, and now we don't have it at all. So we can get vitamin C from plants. But if we had the enzyme, as animals do, when they get very sick, they can boost up to very high levels their vitamin C production. So, from that perspective, maybe 40 grams of vitamin C to knock out an infection is natural. Maybe we're just replacing the effect of that bacteria, and earlier the effect, that our own body created for us. Regardless, other ways of doing it, if you don't like to swallow 40 1 gram capsules of vitamin C. Very few people do enjoy that, including me. You can swipe your nose and mouth cavity with a copper wand. You can use iodine. You can use hydrogen peroxide. You can use chlorine dioxide, another great one. Seems to be very beneficial. 6 drops or 10 drops maybe. Most people, I think, say 6. 6 drops of chlorine dioxide, part A and part B solution. You can find it on Amazon. Let them activate. It turns a little bit yellow, has a little bit of a smell, and then you drink it with water, and do that at the first sign of symptoms. What else? Some people suggest fasting, and some people don't. But some people have said they've had success with that. IP6 Gold is another inositol hexaphosphate molecule that seems to be very effective. High dose vitamin D, maybe 50,000 IU of vitamin D, zinc, quercetin, the whole, the usual stuff. Maybe protease inhibitors from MyGoToStack, and so there are quite a few things that can be done on day 1. And I would also add, just go in the sun. Spend a lot of time in the sun. Don't turn on the lights at night if you usually do, and still don't turn them on if you usually don't. But go out in the sun and sleep really well, and maybe take a day off. And you can usually nip it in the bud so that little tickle in the throat doesn't turn into anything on day 2 or 3 or 4. Those are the things that come to mind right now, and there's probably a lot of other things. There's herbs and different things that people use. I would recommend having these on hand, ready to go on day 1. So Immunity Herbals at MyGoToStack has curcumin, nigella sativa, dandelion, fantastic combination. And then we have the protease inhibitors, which is another fantastic combination for coronavirus or any infection with a virus, even bacteria. They have antibacterial effects too. Relax, do some breath work, etc. Do some grounding, eat well, don't eat junk food, avoid the sugar, and don't hit the alcohol, and you can usually be better. And then if it does, day 2 or 3, you're feeling like, okay, this is not going the right direction, you can blast it with ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine and other things. But I would try to get it no later than day 2. So, first day or 2 of a viral infection, you'll probably get the greatest success with ivermectin and other things. And the thing to be aware of is that people get upset that they get sick because they think that sickness is bad. So sickness is not bad, actually. So the people who get the worst long COVID that I see are usually people who didn't get very sick at the beginning with COVID during the infection, the infection itself. So the symptoms, if they're really strong, are a sign that your body and your immune system are very strong and they're fighting it off. So people think that if I don't get symptoms, it means my immune system's really strong. So in the beginning, yes, if you don't get symptoms at all, that's like one sign your immune system was so strong that it just fought it off and it just kind of like got rid of it before it reached the level of your conscious awareness. So it fought it off, and it's been fighting, by day 1 of symptoms, the battle has been going on for like 5 to 6 days, right? Within you, you're not, in your nose, mouth, whatever, you're not aware of it. But then once you reach the point of symptoms, the sign of a strong immune system is a really powerful immune response. And that immune response is like imagine you have a country, and that's your body. And it's been infiltrated by enemy agents. They're in every city, and you want to go in there and you want to kill the enemy agents. You want to, destroy them. And so you'll go in there and, maybe you send in a strike force, strike teams, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever, trying to minimize damage. But, they've taken over a building. So, you go in there, you're fighting, can't get them out. You bomb the building, you blow up the building, right? And there's some damage, collateral damage along the way. Maybe you destroy the building next door, the cell next to that cell that had the virus in it. Maybe you destroy the whole block. You're doing your best, but it's a war. You're waging a war, so there's going to be some collateral damage. So this collateral damage are the symptoms. You know, the fact that your body is fighting back is what makes the symptoms happen, right? So similar to like chemotherapy, you know, but more targeted, right? So chemotherapy is really, there's way too much collateral damage. It's like dropping, you know, it's like firebombing the city instead of target strikes. But, you know, same, you know, in terms of cancer, for example, if we talk about cancer for a second, if you go through a super all-natural kind of treatment, the kind Hakeem Shabazz would recommend and the only kind that he would administer, you'll get rid of the cancer, but along the way, you could lose as much weight as you might lose on chemotherapy, right? You could have multiple periods where you feel really sick, you're throwing up, having detox reactions. Again, look very similar to chemotherapy. And it's not easy, okay? It's not easy at all. So from the surface, it looks similar, but inside what's going on is completely different. Chemotherapy, again, is like firebombing everything, including destroying your immune system and damaging everything and damaging all these cells. Whereas with the natural approach, your body is going in and destroying things. The immune system and the Army and the Navy are actually boosted and made even stronger, right? And they go and destroy the cancer, but the collateral damage makes you feel sick. And then, you know, it's phase 2, which I'm writing about right now, and we'll probably be publishing soon, a detox, a really deep detox that really roots out the deepest problems that people have. This kind of detox can't be done until you are feeling generally pretty well. But if you just leave it at that, right, which most people do. So somebody has diabetes or cancer even, and they do all these things, maneuvers, and, you know, take these herbs and change their diet and whatever. And then, okay, my blood sugar's back to normal, hooray. But in order to keep it there, I have to keep eating in this strict way, and I have to keep doing this and that and all these things that, you know, I didn't used to have to do before I had diabetes. Now, if they stop doing those things, diabetes come back. If they stop doing those things after curing, you know, quote unquote, curing cancer or putting it into remission, the cancer can come roaring back way worse than before. So in order to get back your resiliency so that the thing doesn't come roaring back, the second phase, which most people don't end up doing, which actually restores their resilience, and that's where the real cure is, involves rooting out all of the toxins and things that have collected over the course of your life, flushing them all out of your body. And that phase is very difficult. That's not a pretty phase. I've seen people go through it, and I've seen them get hospitalized, and I've seen a lot, you know, people give up, and they get so frightened if they go to a doctor, because the doctor's like, no, you have to take an antibiotic, you have to take a steroid, you have to do a surgery, you have to, you know, this is, you know, they start flipping out and they scare the patient. So, you know, most of the people who've pushed through it, not the only ones, but most of the people, it's either they have no other choice, like they're in a village somewhere and they can't afford anything else and they just trust Shabazz and they just do what he says, or they have somebody like me who's like in their corner as Shabazz is telling them, don't worry. And I'm also telling them, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. Don't listen to these doctors, you know, and it usually takes a doctor on your side to convince you that the other doctors are crazy. So anyway, my point here is, getting back to the beginning before I veered off on this tangent, that you have to accept that what looks bad is actually good for you, almost always, okay? Unless you're doing it in the wrong way, like with chemotherapy. So if you're doing things in a natural way, if you're letting your body do what it wants, you know, then the people who get really sick, they should be grateful for that. They should be happy for it, because that means their immune system is wiping out this virus, getting rid of it, rooting it out, making it so that it doesn't gain a foothold in their body, and doesn't leave them with long COVID or whatever, right? So a really robust response that will be catalyzed by sun and proper sleep and vitamin D and all these things, right? These, you know, immune supplements and stuff like that is basically what you want. You don't want to, like, okay, the symptoms start, I'm feeling sniffly, flu and whatever, and then the symptoms go away, they peter out, they kind of, you know, nothing comes of it. Now, again, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. It's possible that you take something that kills the virus, helps your body kill the virus, so that would be fine. In that case, the symptoms might peter out. But in another case, your immune system just gets so like concerned that it just explodes and it goes after everything and it makes you feel really, really sick. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. It's usually a good thing. So anyway, I'm not saying that if your symptoms peter out, it's always bad. It's not, because you could have taken protease inhibitors and curcumin and these other things, and those things may have helped your immune system kill off the problem. And there's no problem with that, right? The other thing that people don't usually understand is that if you don't get sick at all, you still have immunity, because again, most people will have just fought off the virus, right? They've been exposed to it, they fight it off, and it doesn't reach the level of their awareness, it doesn't give them symptoms, but they still develop immunity, so that's important to know. And then if you treat it on day one, once your symptoms start, you will still have immunity. So there's no problem treating something, you will have immunity, even if you use like an antiviral like ivermectin to kill the virus for you on day one of symptoms. Again, it's not really day one of infection, it's just day one of symptoms. So your body will still develop immunity, and it'll be, it should be just as strong. The memory should be, just as robust. So to answer the question, what's the dose of ivermectin? I would say nowadays 0.4 to 0.6 milligrams per kilogram. And, we weigh ourselves in pounds. So divide by 2.2, that's kilograms, or just, go on Google and type in, what is 200 pounds in kilograms, and multiply that by 0.6, and you'll get your answer for how much you should take. And you can take that every day. Probably, it depends. There's different protocols out there. Let's see what the FLCCC says. I haven't checked for a while, but usually I tell people to just keep taking it until they're back to normal, which could be a couple of weeks. Because if you're not back to normal, then you're basically getting into the long COVID state, phase of things, and you need to treat it with ivermectin anyway. So the FLCCC still says 0.4 to 0.6 milligrams per kilogram daily for at least 5 days, or until symptoms resolve, which is exactly what I just said. So that's the key thing that most people don't do. Most people don't keep taking it until symptoms resolve. They keep taking it until they feel a little bit better, maybe 80% better sometimes, but not until symptoms actually resolve. So that's another thing where people drop the ball. And hydroxychloroquine is 200 milligrams per kilogram twice a day, 200 milligrams twice a day for 5 to 10 days. So that's a little bit longer than it used to be. And that's best to be taken with zinc. Yeah, so you can still keep going with the mouthwashes, gargles and stuff, antiseptic mouthwashes. So the FCCC mentions chlorhexidine, pseudopyridinium chloride, eucalyptus menthol, thymol, or 1% povidone iodine, which is pretty easy and readily available. And you can still use hydrogen peroxide. You can also even use chlorine dioxide as a mouthwash and to drink.